Andrew Wibbleton here. Walter Jones here. Elite Nelms
Here.
and John Harden.
Here.
All present.
All right, we have a quorum. I'll entertain a motion to dispense the reading and approve the minutes from the Public Safety Committee meeting August 2nd. Mr. Harden. Nelms. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. 5-0. All right, old business 170620, request for consideration to form a joint task force, Homewood, joint task force of community and Homewood Police Department leadership to evaluate current policies concerning use of force and other related items to make recommendations as needed. Mr. Mayor. Update.
That is correct. Thank you all. As you're aware, we had essentially what we're doing is get a report of the recommendations that were made from the task. Recommendations that were made for by the task force to the police department. They've reviewed them. You'll see the changes that are in red. There are a couple other changes that are also included that I'll discuss after Chief Ross kind of goes through these, but I'll turn it over to him for now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As most of you know, we did some revisions to our use of force policy last June after what occurred in Minnesota with Mr. Floyd. We took it upon ourselves to take a serious look at our use of force policy. We made some revisions at that time, and we put that whole policy on our police department website for everybody to see. The first thing we did was add a preamble to the use of force, and you can read it there if you haven't already. We did not make any changes during the committee meetings that the mayor referred to. We did not make any changes to that. Under the definition section 4-07.05, we did add a definition and change the wording of one definition from less lethal force to non-deadly force. The committee recommended that, and we agreed with the recommendation on changing the wording there from less lethal to non-deadly force. We added the definition physical force to our definitions list.
That's because physical force is mentioned in other areas of the policy, and people were trying to go back and find out what exactly is there and it wasn't there. So keep that out. Just so that
That's correct, sir. And then if you'll skip down to 4-07.10, we added a word there on number 2. We added reasonable. In these situations, only the reasonable amount of force necessary to control the situation shall be used. The committee recommended a slight wording change on that particular part of the policy, and we agreed to that change. Down to number 5, we added officers' response to resistance report. That is the official form of report or the official report that's made anytime one of our police officers uses force against a suspect and effecting an arrest, or if he or she doesn't effect an arrest. Anytime force is used, that is the report that is filled out, and copies are maintained permanently in the police department. Skipping down to 4-07.15, use of less lethal force. At the end of that first paragraph there, you see we added taser, conducted electrical weapon, and impact munitions, just to describe some more less lethal tools that our officers have at their disposal, in addition to what's already there, baton and chemical spray. Yes, sir. Well, as you see in the definition section, it does have the words non-deadly, which we added, and then in parentheses there, you see less lethal force. So the committee did not recommend that we change it throughout the policy. They just wanted it defined in the definitions section. And keep in mind that these definitions, this policy was written for police officers. It was not written for civilians. It was written for police officers as a guide to how they're to conduct themselves whenever they have the occasion to use force. So we're very confident and comfortable with them knowing what these definitions are. This is kind of a new thing that we're dealing with, civilians wanting to read our policies. So that's the reason we added some definitions that we did and some wording changes that we did so that, and of course, we put this on our website for everybody to read. You know, in addition to our police officers, we wanted civilians to understand what the wording meant and what some of the definitions were. So, yes, sir. Let's see, where were we there? 4-07.15, use of less lethal force. Skip down to 4-07.25, deadly force restrictions. We, at the committee's request, and I agreed with it, we decided to ban the use of warning shots. As you see there clearly, the second bullet point, warning shots shall not be fired. And then finally, 4-07.35. At the very bottom there, you see a section that we added at the request of the committee, a section regarding discipline. And it simply says any violation of this policy is subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. And we referenced the Homewood Police Department's Policy and Procedure Manual 3-13.00 that deals with discipline within the police department. So, and the question came from one of the committee members, what happens if your officer or an officer violates this policy? So at the request of the committee, we put what would obviously happen, just as would happen with any policy violation. They are subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. And of course, that applies to this policy as well.
One of the things I do want to point out, one of the other, or a couple of other things that I wanted to point out is some of the other suggestions that came from the task force were not necessarily directly related to the use of force policy, but were good questions and things that we had to look into. One of them, and I have to thank Counselor Sims for putting me together with Jim Krigo, who is the executive director for the JBS Department of Health. They're in the process now of trying to, you haven't heard anything if they've gotten approved. Okay. So I've signed a letter of support for the JBS Department of Health to get the Crisis Diversion Center to be placed. It's in Birmingham. It's on the north side of Valley, but it would, I mean, it's right in our back door. And his group has actually come to, have they been to all the roll calls now? Yes. Okay, so they've been to all the roll calls at the police department to explain to them contact numbers, information on how they can get in touch with them, because this essentially is what one of the requests was for CIT training, which is for the mentally, I don't know how you would, mentally handicapped or mentally mental illness. Yeah. So we've partnered with them. So that's a great help, I know, to the chief and his staff. And then, as you all know, because we talked about it earlier, I've also implemented the sensory inclusion training through Culture City. That's not only for the police department, but also for the fire department at no cost, correct. And so they're in the middle of that training now. As soon as they get to 90%, I've asked the chiefs both to get 100%, but you're required to get 90% in order to get your decals so that everybody knows that we are sensory inclusive. And then each car or fire truck or whatever it will be, will get a sensory bag. So when you're dealing with somebody with autism or, anything on the spectrum, then you have that ability to deal with that person in a much better way. And then we've been equipped to in the past. So those are also the things, again, that were brought up during the task force meeting that I think addressed honestly, a lot of the questions that people had, they just weren't necessarily dealing with the use of force. We knew we were going to get them, and that's fine, but we were able to make a decision and react to those questions that were brought up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. If I could just add one more thing, in addition to Culture City, we are currently undergoing a training block entitled REACT training, and that stands for Recognition and Evaluation of Autism Contact Training is what the acronym is. So in addition to what we're going to learn and what we're learning from Culture City, this is some additional training that all of our personnel are going through as we speak. Prior to these trainings, we had a block of training on implicit bias for the first time in the police department's history that we have successfully completed. I sent two police officers to become instructors on that material, and they did an excellent job presenting that material to all of our personnel and very successful training. And of course, we do cultural and diversity training every year, in addition to these things that we hope to make yearly as well. Any questions, Mr. Gwaltney, about this subject matter?
No, I appreciate the report, and I know there's been a lot of work that went into this, and I appreciate the police department and the mayor's office for pursuing this and putting the committee through to get some good recommendations. Glad
Yes,
y'all are
sir.
happy with it. So this use of force policy is at the directive of the mayor's office and the police department, and is not council driven. So we're simply here to accept the report today. So Councilor Sims, yes.
Yes, sir.
I just want to add, just having gone to these meetings too, they updated, a lot of this tonight, but I just want to add to it as well. Thinking about this entire time frame when this process was occurring, other things that happened were the purchase and implementation of body cameras, and that's also very relevant to this conversation. And also, the chief has referenced that he's looking at a potential app to communicate with residents going forward, and looking forward to potentially putting that in the budget in the upcoming year. And I feel like there's one more thing, but basically I just wanted to highlight that in totality, all those things that have happened in response to George Floyd's murder, and our department reacting, it's just very encouraging. And I wanted to thank them for all the effort and thought that's gone into being accountable and being open to improving as a police department, never settling for how good things are now, always striving to be better. So just appreciative for that, and look forward for continuing to have a great police department. One other thing I want to highlight, I just was trying to find my notes from those 3 committee meetings, at least at the point of our task force meetings in May. Since November 2020, Homewood Police Department had responded to 5 murder or attempted murders, and in all cases, the suspects were apprehended without use of lethal force. And I don't know if there's updated data on that, but that's just really relevant as you're having these conversations, thinking this all through. Implementation of body cameras, just thanks to all y'all are doing to keep Homewood safe, and also make sure that we're being as accountable as possible, and constantly improving. Thank you.
Not to give anything away before next Monday night, but that the app and the rest of the body cameras that we need to fill out the entire force. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. I mean, I just want to thank Chief Ross for all his work on this, and the whole police department. It just speaks to the quality of the folks that we have serving Homewood, and we couldn't have a better police force. I just want a simple question. If you could speak a little bit about what Nick referenced in terms of communication to the public when incidents occur, and how we're just trying to increase transparency.
Yes, sir. I would be glad to. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Sims. And the body cameras. I don't know why I didn't bring that up. That was great information to share. And speaking of information, one of the ways that we want to communicate with the public of who we serve is electronically. Since we're living in the 21st century, we're trying to get away from paper, and we've been pretty much electronic only communications within the police department now for several years, all of our reports and so forth. But I went to a conference I guess it was late last year, and found a vendor that was offering an app that enabled police departments to communicate better with the people that they serve. And I found out that a couple of our neighbors were just starting to use that app, and it really interested me. So I set up an appointment with this gentleman, the vendor, the sales rep. He came up and visited with us and showed us everything about that app, and talked to one of my guys that is one of my main public information officers. And we really liked what he had to present and what it could mean to the community in terms of us being able to relay information to them and communicate with them in a better way, a more up to date, up to the minute almost way. So I did incorporate that into my budget request. The mayor and I have spoken about it. I'm very excited about it. Some of the people that I know in the public who have expressed concerns about information sharing are excited about it. So I look forward to hopefully getting to implement something like that in the upcoming budget year, and really reach out to the public in a much more modern way. I mean, we all carry these things around with us, more than I would like, frankly, but it is what it is. And if we're doing that, we might as well use it to our advantage. And you can click on a police department app, hopefully in the future, and find out what we're doing and what we've done and what's happening in your neighborhood, public service announcements and all sorts of things. So we're looking forward to that very much. Appreciate you bringing that up.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I move
Go
to
ahead.
accept the report.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the report. Is there a second? Mr. Jones, Councilor Martin has a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 080721, request for consideration of a downtown entertainment district, President Wyatt, Andrews, and Councilor Gwaltney. So we had the discussion last week on this about, 2 weeks ago, about limiting this to downtown, and we were going to define the hours and the boundary. I think we had the map drawn up last week, Mr. Kendrick, and from the last meeting to use that map and the boundary, basically as far as we could get. Yep, that's it. That good? The only thing I don't remember having provided was the time frame, the hours, and right. Yeah, we can actually tailor in the side of it, right? Because I thought we had drawn with a Sharpie that we were going to cut off. Yeah. So we'll cut off the residential pieces of that, so they're not included in it as well. I thought, did we say the Mountain Brook timeframe was?
Yeah,
10 p.m.?
I have the Hoover timeframe, which is the Stadium Trace District. The regular hours in Stadium Trace Improvement District shall be from the daily opening time of the first district licensee to open until the daily closing time of the last district license closed, during which time a patron, guest, or member of the licensee may license the premises. And then Mike, you've got, I was looking at my emails for Mountain Brook and could not find it.
What's the preference of the committee? Do we utilize the licensees opening hours? We don't have any. I think of
I wouldn't mind putting that 10 o'clock on that.
I mean, it is downtown. I'd say 11 would be reasonable.
I'm less concerned about the hours. I mean, I think both what y'all are talking about is reasonable in my mind. I do like Mountain Brook's provision about special events.
Yeah.
That if there are special events that are going to have some sort of unusual hours for whatever day they're having it on, that they can come and try to get that in whatever process it is.
Any vendor having a special event that serves something outside of their premise has to have that legally by IBC guidelines
Right.
anyway. So
Yep.
I think that's good. Also, that's
Yes. So it's, my biggest concern is that we include that provision, but in terms of times, I'm fine with what y'all are discussing.
So, well then, so we mimic the what Malcolm's doing then. Okay. So, Ms. Skinner, we'll add to the ordinance, the hours that were outlined in the Mountain Brook timeframe.
Show it as part of our ordinance.
This would be an attachment to the ordinance, correct?
It would be.
Okay. You want to use that as a street boundary? Or do we want to just say all these streets encompass, basically list the streets? Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I think we'd use basically Highway 31, Dale, 18th Street to Central, back up to Oxmoor. That'd be our 1/2. Yeah, that'd be the same box. Okay, what I'll do is I'll take this and we'll just cut off this residential section, so it's not included, and then use the map as it is. Grab my Sharpie. All right, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Counselor Gear has a question. Oh, thank you. Very good.
I guess I'm wondering. what you're imagining, what the red dot line from 131.
So,
My conversation began with episode, and that they did not, and they needed guidance, and they didn't want to pull over everybody carrying a cup, carrying public events that are out. So that's a where it started. And also vendors that are here, Seven Social.
Yeah,
outside, that would be
so-
like Seven Social.
I think it's less about, and I would be surprised if you end up with someone walking from Central all the way to 31 with a drink.
Yeah.
What I think this is designed to do is, first of all, you can only have so many, so you've got to encompass everything in one. But what it allows is, we have a number of restaurants that, around Soho Square, for example, where people are waiting to get to tables or anything like that, and it allows them some more flexibility in terms of what they do with, and provides the police with the flexibility to not have to come in and get them in trouble when people are really just sort of milling around. It would also allow easier events for in gathering spots like Soho Square. But so you need to include all the restaurants that you want to include in that space, because you can only have so many districts. I don't really anticipate that we're going to have people walking from Central all the way over
Well,
here,
But
but
remember, the whole reason we're working on Reed Street in the next budget cycle is
Sure.
to connect with two parts of downtown. So if someone's at the grocery group hub and they want to come over and meet friends at the cornhole, they
Sure.
can carry their beverage down. That's
Right.
But we're trying to connect and bring in.
It's not that they're doing it now.
Right.
So it's not like chaos is going to break out in Homewood. People are currently doing this, and it's a risk for, the person on the street to be doing that legally, because, there's a liability for, them doing that. But also, if you're at Soho and you walk out to sit and have a drink at the fountain while you wait for your table to become available, that's currently illegal. And additionally, if you're at Sip and Chop, you're not allowed to take that drink and walk up and down the street with it. So I think it's a commerce generator overall. It protects the merchants because their license doesn't allow them to take that off the premise. So I think it's an overall win for all of them.
I also mentioned that I had someone say that they were not planning on participating. They had been participating in the cornhole tournament at Avondale and were skip over us. We did not allow alcohol. We're working on that right now, actually. But this has been done very successfully in Hoover, Mountain Brook, and Vestavia Hills, and City Center, and the City of Birmingham.
So in those cities, the area is as large as ours.
It's a half mile. I think the rule.
Because it does seem like
The villages.
Soho makes sense to me. 18th Street, but, going on the way.
Well, when you say central, that's really like little. Boston and
Yeah.
Grocery Group. So that is central.
And I think they would. London Crescent.
Right.
But I
well,
feel like those, if we left those people out, like if we left the grocery out and I don't know what's gonna go in Little Donkey. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like they'd probably be like, well, why don't we leave us out? Because we're over here. We're hanging over here. That's what that's the allowable area, right? It's a half mile by half mile.
Correct. Yeah. Right, if there are no other questions, we had a motion, correct? Counselor Jones?
Move to approve.
Moved to approve, we have a second. Second by Counselor Nelms, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Yeah. That's it. Motion carries 5-0. So there. No, because we have one other license available, this will move out to council, and once we have approval from, we'll have to file with the legislature to be allowed to have a third area. So once we have the second's available now, once we have the third available, I think we'll go back and revisit it then. So it'll probably be next year. Correct, downtown. All right, so that item is approved. There are no other items under new business, so public safety is adjourned.